Well, it's time now for perspective. Early on in the pandemic, world-renowned Geneva-based cartoonist Chappatte received a phone call from a doctor in Geneva, warning him that it was only a matter of time before the rapidly deteriorating situation in Italy would spread to the rest of Europe. As we now know, it did spread, leading to global lockdowns, a huge loss of life, of course, and ongoing restrictions on our freedoms. An extraordinary few months that Chappatte has chronicled meticulously in his latest graphic work, Au coeur de la vague, at the heart of the wave. And Chappatte is my guest today. Thank you very much indeed for speaking to us here on France 24. Now, this is an account of the pandemic in real time as the virus slowly but surely makes its way from China to Europe. Where did this idea for a day-by-day account of the pandemic come from?
Well, I'm not sure what happened, but I think it was very early March, and that's when I got a phone call from Professor Didier Pittet, who's well known for having basically given the hydroalcoholic gel to humanity through the World Health Organization. He's someone who developed a program in Geneva, which was called the Geneva model. And they were able to reduce the number of infections in Geneva hospital. So he called me very early March, and he told me what was going on in Italy. We didn't know it had not been published in the media, in the press yet. And then the virus entered my head and my body, by the way, because I got sick very early. And I got into lockdown, and I started doing these comics. I thought we would be facing as individuals and as humanity something totally unique. And we needed to chronicle those moments, those days, as much for me, as well for the hospital. One of the center of the story is the hospital in Geneva and the heroes there, but of course what was happening to the planet.
Now, a huge amount of this work is in fact in the first person. This is to a large extent an account of your experience of the pandemic. Why did you choose that particular approach?
Well, this is a trick if you want. It's the narrator in graphic novels. It's useful to have the narrator because you can identify with me as I take you into Geneva Hospital. My main goal is not to tell the story of my lockdown. It is really the story of those people, those fighters fighting the disease in the hospital. So you have that professor I told you about. You have the head of the intensive care unit. You have a nurse and other people. You have also the cleaning people. I talk to the cleaning people, those people of courage that we tend to forget. They go every day into these rooms and they find the courage to go and clean up so that everything is clean and the medics can work in a safe place. I was very touched by their testimony, by these people.
And that really rich cast is something that really struck me when I was reading the work. A reminder that this pandemic really has affected all elements of society.
That is true. That is true because when you broaden the circle from the hospital and those heroes I'm talking about that I'm following from March to basically June, August, you open the circle and you look at what's happening to our societies, to the economy, of course, to the poor, to the poorest among us. And then I open the circle through what is happening in different cities of the world. This is the first story we ever experienced, all of us, that was both very intimate and universal. We were all living the same story, the same fears, the same hopes, maybe at the same time. So that is the interest of this genre. And I'm using also editorial cartoons. It's not only a graphic novel, it's not only comics. I'm using parts of editorial cartoons precisely to be able to talk about what's going on in other places. Of course, the United States and the beautiful work done by President Trump, botching the whole COVID policies. And this allows me to bring some humor into a book that is otherwise very, touching and emotional.
It's funny you mentioned the humour. That leads me on to my next question. This really is full of a lot of humour. Comments about people's fascination with acquiring toilet paper before the first lockdown. At one point you joke that Geneva during lockdown finally earned its reputation as a dead city. Just how important is humour to what you do? Because this is, in many aspects, a very dark subject matter.
Precisely, but I think humor is what saves us. It's we need it as much as the air we breathe, and we could see at the beginning of the pandemic when this phenomenon was totally new to us. We were all scared. We could see the role of humor. People were sharing memes. They were sharing jokes, a lot of jokes, a lot of memes. We need to resort to humor when we are faced with something like that. I think humor is what saves us. It's not reimbursed, but it's very healthy to you. I think it can be a good ingredient in staying safe and alive.
Now, earlier this year, you also published a book called This Is the End, a collection of your cartoons from the New York Times, which often provide a rather uncompromising and thought-provoking testimony of the Trump years. What was it like for you as a cartoonist to be faced with someone like Trump in the White House?
Wow, you could say this is the never-ending end that we are witnessing now in Washington. And yes, the title of my book could be prophetic now, hopefully. It was really something out of the ordinary to have Donald Trump as a cartoon subject. I have often said, populists are not an easy target for satire, and that was true every single day. I would do a cartoon about Trump, a caricature about him, and he would outdo me. By the time my cartoon was published, he would have said or done 2, 3 even craziest things. So it was hard to follow him. I think for the media, for all of us, it was hard to keep track with him. Always turning the tables and always, as we are seeing now in the process, always pushing the system to the limits. So I think he will still be around. I wouldn't dare to make a comparison with the virus, but I will. He will still be around with us, just like the coronavirus will be.
Hopefully for not too much longer. As for the coronavirus, Chappatte, thank you very much indeed for being with us here today on France 24.
Thank you.
A reminder now of our top headlines here on France 24. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo prepares to discuss Iran with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. That as the outgoing Trump administration announces sweeping new sanctions against Tehran. And following a 4-year investigation, an Australian military report finds compelling evidence that elite Australian troops unlawfully killed 39 Afghan prisoners between 2009 and 2013.